As James Madison once said, democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention. It's a compelling statement, isn't it? Let's unpack it. To understand Madison's sentiment, we first need to clarify the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic. You see, the term democracy often gets thrown around loosely, but in its pure form it essentially means majority rule. Every citizen has a direct say in the governance of the state. Sounds good on the surface, but it has a crucial flaw. It can lead to what's known as the tyranny of the majority. Here's a simplified example. Let's say 51% of people vote to take away a certain right from the other 49%. In a pure democracy, that would be permissible. The majority has spoken, right? But is that fair to the minority? This is where a constitutional republic comes into play. In a constitutional republic like the United States, there are certain rights that are safeguarded, no matter what the majority says. Individual liberties are protected by a constitution, an unchanging document that sets the rules of the game. As constitutional law professor Randy Barnett eloquently put it, in a Republican constitution, first comes rights, then comes government. The government's role is to protect these rights, not to infringe upon them based on the whims of the majority. This distinction is vital. In a constitutional republic, the law is king. The Constitution sets the rules and everyone, including the government, must abide by them. But in a pure democracy, the majority is king. The majority can change the rules to suit their interests, potentially at the expense of the minority. So when James Madison spoke of the turbulence and contention of democracies, he was warning against the potential tyranny of the majority, where the rights of the minority can be trampled by the will of the majority. In a constitutional republic, the law is king. In a pure democracy, the majority is king. And that, my friends, is a crucial difference. A democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. These words, from none other than Thomas Jefferson, have echoed through history, warning us of the potential dangers within the very heart of democracy. But what does this mean exactly? It speaks to the inherent risk in a pure democracy, where the majority rules absolutely, with no safeguards for the minority. It's a system that can easily become a tyranny of the majority, where the rights and interests of the minority can be completely disregarded. This is not a hypothetical threat, but a harsh reality that has played out time and time again throughout history. Let's take a moment to delve into the annals of the past. Consider the example of ancient Athens, often hailed as the birthplace of democracy. While it was indeed a pioneering experiment in governance by the people, it was also a system that allowed for the execution of Socrates, a man guilty of nothing more than challenging the status quo. The majority, swayed by rhetoric and emotion, voted for his death, and so it was. Fast forward to the French Revolution, a tumultuous time where the majority, drunk on newfound power, oppressed and executed the minority without due process in the Reign of Terror. From these examples, it's clear that a pure democracy, unchecked, can lead not to freedom and fairness, but to tyranny and oppression. This is not to say that democracy is inherently evil, far from it. The principle of people having a say in their own governance is a noble one. However, it does underscore the need for limits, checks and balances to prevent the potential tyranny of the majority. This is where the idea of a constitutional republic comes into play, offering a safeguard against such dangers. Democracy is a charming form of government, full of variety and disorder, as Plato poignantly put it. It's a system that thrives on diversity and debate, but without careful management and balance, it can also lead to chaos and injustice. The challenge, then, is to harness the potential of democracy, while also safeguarding against its inherent dangers. The Constitution is a guide which I will never abandon. George Washington. Now let's dive into the inherent strengths of a constitutional republic. At the heart of this system lies the stalwart safeguard of individual rights. Unlike a democracy where the majority can often disregard the minority, a constitutional republic ensures the protection of individual rights against the whims of the majority. This is the cornerstone that upholds the balance between liberty and order. James Madison, one of the founding fathers, once said, "The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary in the same hands may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny." This is why a constitutional republic is designed to distribute power among different branches of government, preventing any single entity from gaining absolute control. In a constitutional republic, The Constitution serves as a permanent standard, a written guarantee that every individual's rights will be respected regardless of political climate or societal changes. It's like a beacon, guiding the ship of state safely through the stormy seas of shifting public opinions. Professor Randy Barnett of Georgetown Law School elaborates on this, stating, "In a constitutional republic, the powers of government are limited by legal principles, not by the fluctuating sentiments of the majority." This means that even if the majority supports an action that infringes upon the rights of a minority, the Constitution prevents such action from being implemented. John Adams, another founding father, also emphasized, "Government is instituted for the common good, for the protection, safety, prosperity, and happiness of the people, and not for profit, honor, or private interest of any one man, family, or class of men." Therefore, a constitutional republic by design protects the rights of every individual, regardless of their societal standing, against the potential tyranny of the majority. It is the embodiment of the principle that every citizen is entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Constitution only gives people the right to pursue happiness. You have to catch it yourself. Benjamin Franklin. Remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. These are the words of John Adams, one of the founding fathers of the United States and a staunch advocate for a constitutional republic. Now you might ask, how can a democracy, a system that seemingly champions the voice of the people, devolve into a dictatorship? Well, the answer lies in the very essence of democracy itself. Democracy, in its purest form, is the rule of the majority. But herein lies a perilous pitfall. What happens when the majority decides to trample on the rights of the minority? What happens when the majority decides to consolidate power into the hands of a single entity or a select few? Historically, we've seen this play out. The Weimar Republic in Germany started as a democracy, but economic instability and political opportunism led to the rise of Adolf Hitler, transforming the democratic nation into a brutal dictatorship. Similarly, Julius Caesar rose to power in Rome's democracy, only to crown himself as the dictator perpetuo, or dictator in perpetuity. Renowned law professor Robert G. Natelson once said, "The great danger of democracy is factionalism. A faction can gain control and, intoxicated by power, can oppress the minority, and that's the step towards dictatorship." This is not to say that all democracies are doomed to devolve into dictatorships, but it serves as a cautionary tale. It emphasizes the importance of checks and balances, of safeguarding individual liberties, and of upholding the rule of law, principles that are at the core of a constitutional republic. In conclusion, as we reflect on the words of George Orwell, all tyrannies rule through fraud and force, but once the fraud is exposed, they must rely exclusively on force. We must remember that the transition from a democracy to a dictatorship is often a gradual process, one that can occur when power is unchecked and the rights of individuals are not protected. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. John Adams. This profound quote sets the stage for us to delve into the heart of our discussion: the United States as a constitutional republic. Now let's get one thing clear. Despite what many may believe, the United States is not a democracy. It is a constitutional republic. The founding fathers were wary of pure democracies, understanding the potential for majority rule to infringe upon the rights of the minority. Thus, they established a system where the rule of law, as outlined in the Constitution, would reign supreme. James Madison, the fourth president of the United States, and one of the key architects of the Constitution, once said, "Democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths." His words underscore the founders' belief that a constitutional republic would better safeguard individual liberties and protect against the tyranny of the majority. In our constitutional republic, the government's powers are limited by law, and each individual's rights are inherently protected. As esteemed law professor Randy E. Barnett aptly put it, the Constitution was designed to be a more perfect union that would enable checks and balances to prevent a bloody revolution every generation. The key to making this system work is the balance of power between the states and the federal government. As we wrap up this exploration, let's remember that the United States was founded on the principles of liberty, justice, and the pursuit of happiness. These ideals are preserved and perpetuated in the Constitution, the backbone of our constitutional republic. In the words of Julian Castro, in the end, the American dream is not a sprint or even a marathon, but a relay. Our families don't always cross the finish line in the span of one generation, but each generation passes on to the next the fruits of their labor.